Okay, I think this is yours. That's yours, Richard.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we've been studying this book all month on the levels of attachment. Thank you.
Mhm.
By Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. And it's really based, again, on that Toltec philosophy that came out of southern Mexico over 1,000 years ago, where a warring tribe decided to transform themselves. And they became peaceful in nature and developed this entire philosophy of transformation. So we wanted to bring it to you so we could understand it today and apply it to our lives. And hence we've gotten some of your questions so we can have a good discussion on it. If you have additional ones to come forward, we'll try to answer as many as we can. So you want to give a little summary of where we left off last week
Certainly,
or
try to. Um, well, as some of you know, where we have been is we started off the series on the 5 levels of attachment by Don Miguel Luis Jr. And we started off by talking about what he talked about is that our perceptions limit our potential. If I was taught that I'm not very smart, and I really believe that, then I probably might not go to college. I would say that would be a limitation of one's potential. Now, not everybody has to go to college, but it is a limitation of one's potential if you do it if you make that decision because somebody taught you that, okay? So what we perceive limits our potential because most of our perceptions, all of our perceptions actually are illusions. They are a figment of our imagination. They are part of our belief system that really makes no sense. And the Course in Miracles calls it insanity. We live in insanity because we believe all these things that are truly illusions. And then we talked about the dream of the planet. That generations and generations have created this, what we in Unity call a collective consciousness. And the collective consciousness are the ideas of what you and I ought to be, what we should become, how we should think, all the things that we are supposed to do in order to grow up and be perfect. And most of us cannot achieve that. And so what happens is, because the planet says you ought to be this way, and we're a little bit this way, we get frustrated and we start to think less of ourselves. And then he goes on to talk about, which we talked about last week, those 5 levels of attachment. Fanaticism. I am fanatic about what I believe. This means that I have bought it, I believe it, everything around me is real, and if you don't agree with me, I'm going to do one of 2 things. I'm going to disown you, or I'm going to kill you. That's what fanaticism is. We see it in the world. Only a few people are like that, thank God. But there are a few, because they've bought totally into the illusions of lack, the illusion of suffering, the illusion of not being enough. And the way you compensate for that is by saying, here's the way everybody else should be, and I'm going to make sure they're that way. And then there's this idea of identification, which is the 4th level.
internalization?
Internalization, yeah. Thank you. And internalization simply means that I've now gotten to the point that I'm not quite a fanatic, but I have my belief systems. And don't you tread on them. Mm-hmm. And don't you tell me they're wrong. And don't you tell me to change. Because I know the truth, although it's not setting me free. Right? And then there is identification, where we identify with something and we become attached to it, but we aren't quite at the point of internalizing it, nor are we at the point of being fanatic. And what that simply means is I start to identify with certain things, and the people around me need to identify with what I identify with, or I'm not comfortable. because you see there becomes the shoulds and the coulds, and you should have, and you ought to, that kind of thinking. And what you're doing is you're starting to say, okay, my belief systems are what are starting to drive me, and if we're not careful, we move down those levels. That's what I would call it, to each of the other two before, which is the internalization of fanaticism. Now, there's a second level, which is called preference, okay? And the example they use, which I think is a great example in the book, is if you go to a sporting event, and when you go, you choose a team you want to root for. You do that before you go. And you go in, and if you're at the home team, with a home team, you start to pick up the excitement, okay? You start to root for the home team. And you aren't quite in identification. You see, if the team loses, it ruins your day. In preference, it says, I'm going to root for the team. I'm going to be right here in this moment. I'm going to enjoy life just like it is. But when the game's over, it's over. And I leave and I say, I had a great time, even if my team lost. I had a great time. And then from preference, it is being the authentic self, where we accept who we are, that we are spiritual beings having this spiritual experience. But we are in the human condition. And the human condition feels real to us at times. But when I accept myself, when I step into that place, I then can be authentic and understand the illusions and choose which illusions I want to participate in so I can enjoy life. That's it.
Yeah, that's great. And so I'm just going to go right into the first question because we'll be able to explain more of where we're going in this acceptance process. So the question given to us today is, what is the difference between being attached to a goal and dedicated to a goal? Great question. So if we look at the attachments, and the way I see them is we have the core, and then we kind of go out and we lose ourselves out in these other levels, that if we're really attached to the goal, we're living in a story. We're living in a drama. We're living in something that we have to make sure it happens. We have to identify in every way. We have to internalize who we are, and we will not move away from it, come no matter what happens. When we're dedicated to a goal, we can be more on that level 2, like Richard has said. We can prefer that we accomplish the goal, but we're not caught up into it. We're not a fanatic about it. And we will definitely learn our life lessons, but we won't allow ourselves to be lost in it. Do you understand what I'm saying? You know, if we get into a story of who we think we are and we're playing out a part, if that's taken away from us, we go into a huge drama. And the drama in us is where we start suffering because we think we've lost it. And we think someone has taken it from us. Whereas if we're just simply dedicating ourselves to the goal, then it may or may not happen, but it comes out to be the highest and best, what's the best for us. You want to acknowledge anything about
That's
that,
great.
dedicated to a goal?
Just, well, you asked me, I had to say it. Anyway.
Well, I will say this before you get going. I'll say this.
I won't get going.
Yeah. If we lose ourselves, we're in the shadow. So that's where we have to watch ourselves. The shadow is unseen and we're operating from it, and we're doing it because we really believe that's who we are. When we let go of the story, we let go of the shadow, we embrace the totality of who we are, and then we can step forward to pursue any goal that we want and have it manifest or not.
Thank you.
Okay, you might have a question you want to.
Over there. Let me honor these first, okay?
Oh,
Thank
this
you.
is a good one. This is really about prayer and about how we pray here.
Near the end of the service, there is an opportunity to come up for prayer, just with our prayer chaplains, I think is what it's talking about. What happens there? I don't know. It's all confidential. Um, our prayer chaplains are trained in two or three ways. Number one is to maintain a spiritual space, a space of prayer, a consciousness, if you would, of prayer. And so we call that being prayed up. So when they come up here, they are prayed up. And what that means is when you come forward with whatever your request is, they can hear it, they can pray with you briefly, and they can affirm for you, and they use affirmative prayer, not what you're concerned about, but what you want, if I could put that simply. So they're not going to dramatize what's existing in your life. Instead, they're going to affirm the truth of who you are. If you feel like you're unhealthy, they're not going to say, we're sorry you're unhealthy, and dear God, help them get healthy. They're going to say, I see you as health. I affirm you are health. They're going to allow Spirit to move in and through you so you feel the same thing, and they're going to share that with you as an example. And so, but you know, it is just a personal experience. It is a time to really communicate and have another person share with you that possibility of what you are and who you are.
Yes, in your potential. And it's really a time that you can detach from your own story and allow yourself to see yourself prosperous, healed, healthy, in a healthy relationship, finding that right job, saying the right words to someone that you want to reconcile with, so that everything that you're doing is affirming that new part of you that's showing up, not connected to the old story where you felt either lack or you felt dis-ease or you felt anger or in any way attached to old emotions. So prayer in unity is the highest accelerated form of mind action toward moving into your total potential. So thank you for whoever asked that question. That was great. Do you have one you want to read?
Mm-hmm. I just read
All
one.
right. So here's one about the dream of the planet. Do you believe as unity people have responsibility to express our enlightenment of the dream of the planet to share outside of unity? And if so, how? So, what would you like to say about that?
Well, I wasn't prepared, but I will.
Okay.
Okay,
Why
thank you.
don't you say, I've got, and then I'll follow up with
All right.
whatever you want to say. The dream of the planet. What's the
I
dream
got
of
it.
the planet?
Well, we talked about the dream of the planet is that which we are attached to, that which we have been told to believe, and that which we believe because we've been told to believe it. We've been domesticated in such a way that we do what we are told to do, and if we don't, we feel guilty. Do I have a responsibility to or for? No, I don't think so. That would be my answer.
To express our enlightenment.
I understand. Thank you. Do I? I don't think that we have a responsibility. It's not expressed to influence others. I think we have an opportunity to.
Wow.
Okay? And what we have to do is listen and leave the door open in case anybody asks us a question, in case anybody says something about they feel alone, they feel lost, they're looking for something, they're looking for a church home, whatever happens to come up, okay? Now, that doesn't mean in your workplace, in your home, in the community that you cannot share what is your journey when the opportunity is correct. More importantly, I think what happens is if you manifest the attributes of God, which I really can't define, but we try, of unconditional love, of wisdom, of concern, of compassion, of empathy. And you do that no matter where the person's coming from. You look through their stuff. They'll feel it. And someday they'll ask you, What's happened? How did you change, if you did? Or ever since I've known you, you seem to bring something special into the workspace. That'll happen. And when that happens, it gives you an opportunity to talk. But do I need to tell people they are captured by their dream? Really none of my business. Okay? None of my business. But I can share who I am, and that's the best I can do.
You know, that's a great point, because in unity we say that we try not to tell people if you see them making an error. What we try to do is instead just be self-observant. And when we feel uncomfortable enough, we will have that awareness, I do need to make a change. And I have that power within me to do it. So it might take us a little longer. Maybe there'll be a good friend around who'll give you a nudge. But in essence, the opportunity is for ourselves first. And then as we are sharing in activities, we can always invite a friend. And the opportunity is there for them to come if they wish. If they are involved in other activities, they can definitely say no. But we can speak up for that which we believe in, and do so in a way that is inviting to others. And so I do invite people here. I spent many years looking for a spiritual community, and I truly felt isolated. And so one of the reasons that I do believe in inviting people is just so they won't be at home, isolated, where they might find that unity has broad enough shoulders that someone of a different belief system could come in and still find those attributes and those virtues and the whole belief system that allows them to have their own separate understanding of God, whatever that means for them. We can say there are many paths to God, many names for God. There's only one God. That's God the good. And when we go there, we can say that is within me. So sharing this message, this unity message, is really so important for me. If I had found it at an earlier age, I would have been so delighted. Because when I did find unity, I will share with you that it confirmed everything I had been thinking for years. You may have experienced that in your own lives. Yeah? Anybody? Okay. So we all know that once we've found it, it registers as truth within us, and so we show up because that truth within me is the same within you. And the how part of this question is sharing with one another in teams, personal relationships, joining the interfaith team here where we meet with monthly with those of other faiths, and we can share with them our beliefs and we can learn from them, from others. We eat breakfasts together, and we begin to just see how the magnificent way they worship is so fulfilling and satisfying for them. It broadens us. And the other thing that Richard has begun doing is meeting with a group of folk from the Habitat for Humanity. And so you've been sharing with them a little bit or getting to know them. And
Well,
maybe
getting
it's
to
an
know them,
opportunity.
but yeah, and most of them are ministers of another faith, so I don't try to convince them they ought to come here or what we believe. But we get a chance to discuss things from time to time,
Sure.
and we do it in an honoring way. So that's really positive. I think one of the things I did for a number of years, about 4 years, is I met with two rabbis who had totally different opinions of how to interpret the scriptures. I met with two individuals who were born again and really did believe the King James Version of the Bible was it. And I met with two Catholic priests and a nun. And we all met together every week, and a Christian Scientist. And we all met together every week to interpret the Bible. And we started off with the first verse in Genesis, and I did this for 4 years, and when I left, we were through the 9th verse in Genesis. Or 9th chapter, I'm sorry, in Genesis. The 9th chapter.
Yeah.
Which isn't very far.
Yeah.
But you know, the begats, where they begat, I usually just flip the page. We actually went through and looked at each of the begats and what they meant from a Hebrew perspective, from a Greek perspective, and from the way we interpret it today. And it was pretty fascinating discussions. between all of us because none of us agreed or disagreed totally, okay? But we did search that way. And that's a wonderful way in which to build your confidence of what you believe. And then when you're around others and they ask the questions, you can possibly answer those kinds of questions. Um, there's another question here, Vicki, that I think is a very powerful question. It says, I realized after the service last Sunday how much attachments influence my behavior and attitude, some deeply embedded. Any shortcuts to releasing them?
You know, it took a long time for those embedded beliefs to take root, didn't it? So it's not going to be a shortcut. It's not going to be an easy path to release them. But I will say, once we learn in the power of the silence within us where we can connect with God presence, we will begin to trust ourselves so that no matter what comes to us from the outer may not resonate with us because we're already connected to our guidance system, our GPS system, if you want to think of it in those terms. We already know who to turn to. And so because of that, it's easier to just move through life a little bit. Did I answer that? About the attachments?
Well, a little bit. I'm going to add to it.
Well, and
But you did.
yeah.
You got there. And I think that in the book, The 5 Levels of Attachment, Don Miguel Luis Jr. says that in order to move through that process is, first of all, we have to determine sometimes, not always, but sometimes, where did I learn that belief? Where did I learn that belief? And how is that belief affecting me now? And am I using the belief well? Am I using the belief well?
I can give an example.
Okay.
One of the studies that I've done in my life has been through VCU in the School of Social Work, and I studied family systems. One of the systems that was deeply embedded in my family was that no one got divorced. And coming from a very, very wonderful family of faith, the expectations were that you worked things out, and that was the way it was. But you know, for those who feel this understanding that it's really in their best interest to let go and to divorce, then there may still be, because if the family system said no divorce, there may be this feeling of guilt. There may be this feeling of being wrong. And then if trying to step out of that family system and to taking steps for oneself, there would be, questions. Who am I to do that? And so it gets right into the dream of the family, doesn't it? The family stays together. And so because of that, for those who do step out into getting a divorce, it seems as if you are stepping away from the family. And so the attachment level to that family, whether it's not just a preference whether to divorce or not, it's something that's you identify with or you internalize, almost be a fanatic about, staying together regardless of what happens. But I will tell you, and I can tell you this from my own personal experience, that when you do step out and go through a divorce, you do feel as if you are breaking through a dream, some kind of illusion. My family, as I stepped out and took the steps I needed to take, my family did stay behind me. They were shocked, but they loved me through it. And so everything that I set out there as a fear was simply not true. But I thought it would unfold a different way. And the way it unfolded was, although no one else would have taken the steps that I took, they accepted me. And so I think that many times we can't make assumptions about what families will do. And so we can really look at all of these agreements that we've been learning through these books. But I do think it does take courage to step through any perceived dream that enfolds your life or an embedded belief. There are times when it still shakes me up a little bit because of those old embedded family belief systems. But I just breathe into it and take it in stride and know that all of us need to stop and decide, spiritually discern what is in our highest and best. And then that's the guidance system that we can trust. We always trust. And when the choir was singing that song, I will bless the Lord at all times, the Lord is this inner I am presence. That's the Lord. And He's good and she's good. I'm going to teach the choir how to add that little ending to it. So it's good when we trust this inner divinity.
There's one other thing to remember, I think, when we are going through the levels of attachment and we're trying to change. That's what we're really saying. If I am fanatic about something, if I have a certain belief that no matter what anybody says to me, this is the way it is, that's a level of fanaticism if I'm willing to push back and think that they should adapt the same belief system. But as we go through the changes, we start to ask ourselves, do I still need that belief? What can happen is the ego really becomes very much like the coyote. And what the ego does is says, because you're changing your mind, that you must have been doing something wrong in the past. And because you've been doing something wrong in the past, you need to feel guilt. So sometimes when we change our belief system, we are saying, the ego is saying, don't do that. And if you do, you should feel guilty about it. This is what you believed for 30 years. Why would you change it? And then we start to feel guilty about it. You see, we fall back into the attachment process. We fall back into the trap of the ego being in charge instead of us being in charge of the ego. And just so you know that it's okay to say, I've changed my mind. The illustration I used at 9 o'clock was, how many of you still have a rotary phone at home? What? Oh, one back there. Okay, yeah. It must be a collector's item, okay? Now, how many of you have it hooked up? Yeah, okay. So some of you are saying, what's a rotary phone? But anyway, but you see, what happens is if you said the rotary phone was the only way, you'd be out of luck right now. So we do change. Technology is something we came to adapt to very quickly. If we don't, we have to, because we can see how it affects our lives. There are other areas in our subconscious that we don't adapt to quite as quickly, and we still have the beliefs that we had when we were children. They're still dominating us. And they get even more increasingly in the way as we become more and more attached to them. So the idea is, step by step, we move through that detachment process. Mm-hmm. And we do it with purpose, and we do it with courage.
And without self-blame or self-criticism or any other way to put down that wisdom within us. You see, this system inside of us is designed to help us transform whatever is then in our way of our highest and best. And when I say trust it, I mean it's not the ego that we trust. It is this higher self that will come back to us again and again and again to confirm that we're going in the right direction. We can listen to it, and it will never fail us, for it is of love. It is of love. And so I think our true opportunity in this lifetime, well, I'll speak for me here, is to really master myself, master my life, and learn how to master transformation in my life. And I've done some of that, but I'm saying on a continual basis, to constantly look inside and ask myself, where am I going and what am I doing with my precious life? And because of that, I know that each of you must be asking yourself similar questions to that, so that your life is filled with purpose, so that your life is filled with passion, so that you have this wonderful direction to go to every day you wake up, and you can say, thank you, Spirit. Thank you, Spirit. Richard,
I think we have
what
time for
else?
one more,
Well, I was just going to,
unless you got two more.
here's a small one.
Mhm.
What do you enjoy most about your ministry?
Well, there are many things I enjoy. Since I've gone in ministry, I've never felt like I'm going to work. I just don't feel like I'm going to work, and that's a wonderful feeling. But what I enjoy most about ministry is the transformation that others experience and that I experience. It's together. It's not apart, or otherwise I wouldn't enjoy it. But to see somebody come in who's downcast, they look down, they don't look you in the eye, or when they do, it's kind of like hollow, which means they're in pain. And after a few months, see that change, see that transformation, and they walk in and they look you in the eye, and you see this brightness, and you know something's happened. I love that. I absolutely love that about ministry, because that means that, and it may not be us, I don't mean Richard and Vicki, it may not be the church. They could be getting that outside somewhere, okay? Because they're more aware, because they are coming here maybe. So I don't take credit for it. I just say their life is being transformed step by step, and as it is, they are stepping into life, and it's only through that transformation that we can truly enjoy life.
Well, I'm just going to ditto what Richard has said. For me, the best thing about ministry is sharing it with you. I did feel I was isolated for so many years, and so sharing your journeys is just incredibly rich for me. Every little decision you make or a choice and you share it with me and Richard or with our ministry staff, we know it's taken quite a lot for you to make that next step. So we can rejoice with you, we can hold intentions for you, but sharing it with you is just the best for me.
I have one last question, and then we'll go into meditation, I believe.
Right.
You'll lead us into meditation. What's the best way to live with passion and purpose without becoming attached to them? I'm an expert at both. I can really be attached to my purpose with passion. Now, one of the 12 powers in unity, gifts we've been given as individuals, as spirit, is zeal or passion. And we can direct that zeal or passion any way we want to. We've given that free choice to do so, but we still have it no matter what. What I try to do, don't always accomplish, but try to do, is when I have this wonderful, new, creative, perfect idea, instead of running out and trying to recruit everybody, I try to step back. It's hard for me, but I try to step back and then look at it from the perspective, is this what Spirit is calling me to do? I spend some time in prayer. I spend some time in discernment. I really ask the question, am I being called here? And as long as I get the answer yes, I continue on that path. But sometimes along the way, the answer is no. And it may come from those around me. It may come from the congregation when we discuss our mission and vision. It may come a lot of different ways. And I would say at the same time that if I still, after all that takes place, believe that Spirit is guiding me that way, I will probably continue that way. Because that's what I'm supposed to do as far as I'm concerned. Now, I might finally get the answer, stop it, Richard. Okay? From Spirit and from others. And I have to listen to that, and that's really hard. Because what I used to do in my business is I used to build a plan that I was really excited about. And I worked that plan. And I thank God after it worked. But I never asked Spirit what was mine to do. See the difference? Mm-hmm. Today, Spirit, what is mine to do? And when I feel and believe that Spirit has said yes, then my passion comes out. And I will continue to do that until Spirit says no. Okay?
Oh, that was excellent. And you know, the other thing is moving along with that zeal combined with wisdom, allowing our 12 powers to work together, zeal and wisdom, then we know we're going in the right direction
Mhm.
because we asked Spirit first.
Yep.
So thank you, Richard. So I think what we'll do now
That
is
means
sing
I've
a
been
little
dismissed.
song. Okay. And we're going to sing this song. It's in every one of us. And this is what we're saying. This wisdom is within every one of us.